안녕하세요. 저는 서울 부암동에 소재하고 있는 서울미술관이라는 곳에서 학예연구실장을 맡고 있는 류임상이라고 합니다. 오늘 제가 말씀드릴 주제는 새로운 예술, 게임이라는 주제를 가지고 얘기를 할 건데요. 사실 많이
It's considered a new art form. And well, I think I've been talking about this issue for like 6 or 7 years. But unfortunately, well, I think that, well, what I'm speaking for all these years hasn't changed so much. And I believe that that is because our perception of game in general has not changed dramatically over those years. However, there's one thing positive. We are a growing number of awareness and we see increasing awareness, public awareness of game, and we do see that many people started to see game as a very important part of our culture. However, we still do not have a very clear answer to a question whether the game is an art or not. So, as a researcher who is really dedicated to this field, well, I feel sorry and regrettable. So, do we think game is art? Well, I think that it is so hard to find the answer to this question because of because this question is actually about our attitude towards beauty and the arts. So, what is art? Well, I think that none of you may have a very clear answer to that question. Well, I don't know the answer, and I think that the world's smartest philosopher might not be able to offer an absolute answer to this question. But what is interesting is that, well, while art is really complex concepts, we use the word art all the time in our daily life. So, for example, when you see a beautiful scene like this, you would say, wow, beautiful, this is an absolute art. But frankly, you don't know what art means exactly. Well, you just had lunch, right? So, when you really loved what you ate, you would say, today's lunch is just an art, but you don't know what art is. So, I don't know, we use the words art all the time. So, I think that it is something that is so familiar with all of us somewhat unconsciously. Unconsciously, if we think and see something beautiful, we use the word art quite a lot. And when there was a game scene that I loved and that I thought that it was an art, I think many of you would know this. It's a scene from my favorite game, Journey. Well, this is a scene where a player is coming from a hill, coming down the hill, and well, when I encountered this scene, well, everything was just perfect. The light, the sun, and the scene, ratio, proportion, everything was beautiful, and I experienced a very strong artistic feelings. So I think the art is something like our natural response to something extremely beautiful. Then why do we work so hard to label game as art? Well, so I don't know. I've been working so hard for like 7 years.
예술이어야만 할까요? 질문을 바꿔서 말씀드리면
To let people know
예술이 아니어도 잘못
that we don't have to label game as art.
예술이라는 걸로 우리를 잡고 올고 있을까요? 아마 글씨가 작아서 잘 안 보실 수 있을 것 같은데요.
Well, I don't know if you can read this, but I will read it for you.
게임은 질병인가?
Game is addictive. It causes addiction. It's a source of disease. So these are news article titles. So WHO defined game as an addictive material. So because we associate game with addiction, we wanted to bring in some positive label. That's why probably we want the art label so much for the game. So yes, addictions bad. So I don't know, but if you use different words like maniac, it gives you slightly different feelings. But when you say art, it sounds positive. It gives you the feeling that if something is art, it has positive value. And for the last 3 years, WHO is ironically saying that you have to play games to lift your soul up if you have to stay at home due to the pandemic. So we have this argument on whether the games are art or not. We don't know why we are having this discussion. I think personally this is meaningless. So if you want to define A is B or A is not B, well, let me put this in a simpler way. For example, if there is somebody who says A is not B or game is not art, well, no, let me put it this way. If you say game is an art, and if you're a game developer, some part of you may think that, but do we really have to label game an art? Well, I met a lot of people at this conference yesterday and today, and if I ask some people that, do you really think game should be an art? Then they didn't really give me a clear answer. So what I want to say is that this argument on whether game is art or not is pretty meaningless. And this is a concept car. This is beautiful, right? Well, it may be my subjective view, but I do think that this is beautiful. And concept cars are interesting because this is a car full of imagination, hopes, and artistry developed by car designers. So it's visually appealing. And this car doesn't have a handle, as you can see here, because it incorporates future technology of automation. So this is a product with high level of artistry that touches many people's heart. And this is an actual product that hit the market. Well, when you have to make a product that has to meet the needs of many people, not one or two, that means that it has to be safe under any weather conditions, and it has to be able to climb, and it has to be beautiful. So if you can meet the needs of more and more people, it will become more successful in the market. So that is how you value a product. So it is different from an art piece. And actually, this idea was first shared by this renowned game PD, Kojima Hideo. He said that games are a product like a car that's developed for many people, meaning that game is not art.
물론 이제 여기서 이 코지마 히데오는 게임의 예술성을 부정하는 건 아니고요.
Well, but I think that he didn't say this to deny the fact that art has some artistic value, but he recognized the fact that game has to be a product that satisfies like many people. So I would like to make a proposition here. I would like to say that we have to stop this meaningless and consuming discussion now. Rather, we have to apply different approach. We can't say game is art, but we can say that game, some part of game is art. So for example, if you look at your smartphone, you can do many things with that. You can shop, you can make phone calls, you can do the message, and you can play games on it. And if you say, like, then is a smartphone a computer? Well, it's kind of hard to answer because it is like a computer, but it's not a computer actually, because it doesn't look like a PC that you have on your desk, but it does have all the functions that PC offers. And we have something different in between. We have iPad, right? So there are many similar things that are not the same but the same. So why don't we focus more on this term then, artistry? We have to focus on artistry, not whether the game is art or not. So here, the question is not whether the games have artistry or not. As I said earlier, it is so hard to define things these days. Smartphones can be a piece, can be a computer, but it is not a computer. Just like that, we have to stop talking about whether the games have artistry now. The question should be the level of artistry. That is how we have a more healthier and more constructive discussion. And it is true that some games may have low level of artistry. However, it doesn't mean that they're not games. Well, I can give you an example of this. Films. Many of you might think that films are art. However, it wasn't considered art back in the past. However, so here's the thing. Films are art. But then, do you think pornography is art too? It may not be. However, that doesn't mean that films aren't art. And one good example that we can bring up here is 바다 이야기. That was a very popular gambling game in Korea. So it may not have a high level of artistry. It is poor quality game, but that doesn't mean that games are not art just because of that. So what I want to say here is that some games do have high level of artistry, and good arts require three elements: intention, ability, and communication. Whether creators' intention was positive or not can be one thing that we have to consider, and the second thing might be creators' ability, production ability in particular. And the last important thing, let's say creator had a great intention and ability. However, if the creator doesn't have a strong communication power and does not know how to communicate with gamers, the final product might not be very successful. It's hard to raise the level of artistry if you lack the third skill.
아마 여기 계신 분들은 다들 너무 좋아하실 거예요. 라스트 오브 어스 같은 경우에는 오늘 나오나요?
I think that Last of Us Part 2 may be released today or tomorrow, and I believe that many of you are so interested in this game because it is popular. Everything, intention, and all the elements and functions of the game is just perfect. However, it is true that many are not happy with the creator's communication skill.
원만큼의 인정을 받지 못하고 있는 거죠.
And that is why it is losing the audience, losing the fan. Well, let's think about other forms of art. Literatures need beautiful writing style and attractive story, and paintings need a charming balance, color, and communicable message, and music needs appealing melodies and rhythms. When they have all that, we could say they have high level of artistry. Then now let's look at some examples from the game industry. This War of Mine, which all of you may be well aware of, is surely a beautiful work. And next, Detroit Become Human was also very well received by gamers because it had a perfect scenario, it was even better than the film, and it has a very complex and interesting story structure. And another good example that is not AAA game is Old Man Journey. It's an indie game and it has beautiful graphic images and touching stories.
그렇다면 여태까지 제가 소속되어 있는 미술계에서 특히 예술로서의 게임은 어떤 대우를
Then how the games as art developed so far. So before the WHO said the game was the source of addiction,
미국의 유수의 뮤지엄들에서
well, games
했습니다.
were loved by many people and the public.
거기서 이루어지는 모든
And museums and galleries tended to exhibit games as they are
여러분이 잘 아는
because they thought games themselves are art themselves.
거기서 즐기고
So they just exhibited games like they do with paintings and drawings.
여기다 더 얘기할 것도 없이
Various aspects
이야기를 가지고
and
만든
properties
그것을
of games were seen as art.
하곤 했습니다. 안 봐도 사는데 지정하는 전시 제가 기획한 전시.
And this is a exhibition that we had at Seoul Museum. Unnecessary exhibition in life in 2019. And the main piece of this exhibition was Florence, made by a famous creative director Ken Wong. He and his game was displayed in the hall, and we also exhibited soundtracks, and we created a space where people could actually play the game. It was so popular, the exhibition was successful. And we made frames with images and still cut from the game, so even if you don't play the game, you would understand its storyline and how beautiful they were. Then now let's apply little more sophisticated categories to better understand the artistry in games. Well, largely there are two types of game: art game and game art. Game art
예술로 만들 거야 하면
I mean,
좋아
art
보이지만
games are like a sculpture.
시멘트가 건물을
If you
만들면
made a
근데 그
sculpture
건물이
with cement,
그냥 사람들이
that's
주거하는 것이
art
아니라
game.
아름다운 건물들이 있잖아요. 그걸 우리 또
But if you made a building,
예술이라고
that's
얘기해요.
game
건축물도
art.
우리가 예술이라고
Some
얘기해요.
buildings are beautiful,
그렇기 때문에 원재를 가지고
so if you make, so you can say buildings are art too. We say architecture is art.
게임이라는 존재인데요.
And another thing that you have to know is artist game.
아이패드라는 새로운 플랫폼에 집중을
With
많이 했어요.
the advent of iPad, many media artists started to making artist game. So this is one example of generative art. And the media artist Toshio Iwai launched Electroplankton for Nintendo. I believe that many of you would know what this is. And Death Stranding by director Kojima Hideo was a big thing too. Well, at first, people were startled. You are moving boxes in the game. However, if you start playing it, you will love it. It has a lot of stories, even better storylines than most films. So this is made by an artist, so it's called the artist game. And there's a new field or new area in this field. It's called art mode. This is a way of creating an artwork using games as an ingredient. So you can use Minecraft or Animal Crossing's elements to make an art piece. And Forgotten City, one of Skyrim mods, was actually made into a product and sold so well in the market. So because we do have a lot of worlds and art pieces made of these ingredients, we don't think about the original content anymore. We are now so familiar with these kind of artworks made of the original art images and game images and elements. So just like our smartphones have music player and game functions and all that, games do have various aspects, and some of them are surely art. But what matters here is that whether the level of artistry is high or not. So before I wrap up my presentation, I would like to talk about the history of films. Films at their very beginning were just a little amusement sold for a few cents. If you pay little money, you will be able to see some animated images. That was just small amusement. But now, no one will deny the fact that films are art. It's called the seventh art. Not all films have high level of artistry, but that doesn't mean films aren't art. The same applies to games. Not all games have high level of artistry, but that doesn't mean games aren't art. Games are art. Games do have artistic aspects. In France, they have various categories for arts. So the seventh art is film, and the eighth art is photography, TV, radio, and other forms of media art. And the ninth art is comics, and the 10th art is game, according to French. And we have to accept it because games do not have a long history. But it is surely one of these various art forms. It is being loved by so many people and it is growing every day. So in the future, it'll stand tall in the world as art. Thank you for listening.